Hey guys, welcome back to the Pro MMA Betting Podcast. Just to quickly recap on UFC 235 and how we got on. In terms of pre-bets, we came out with around half a unit's profit. We lost on Cody Garbrandt, unfortunately. We also lost on Misha Serkinov, but we cashed on a big dog in Diego Sanchez, and we also cashed on Cody Stamann. The first leg of our biggest play, our 4-unit open parlay, cashed. Macy Chasen easily winning by a knockout in the first couple of minutes, and we will be closing that open parlay with the second leg on UFC Wichita, which is this weekend coming. So results for this year so far are, in terms of UFC events, there's been 6 so far this year. In terms of pre-bets, we are unbeaten so far this year. We are 6-0 on UFC events. In terms of live betting for UFC 235, we made around just over 4 units profit. That is also factoring in a live bet we made on the boxing. So for the UFC, on live betting, we are also unbeaten this year. 6 UFC events, and we've won money every time on the UFC this year. So pre-bets were 6-0 on the UFC this year, live betting was 6-0 on the UFC this year, so clean sweep so far. In terms of total profit, we are up on pre-bets around 14 units. So if you bet £100 or $100 per unit on pre-bets, you'd be up around £1,400. And for live betting, we are already up 32 units. So if you bet £100 per unit or $100 per unit, you'd be up around 3,200. So in total, if you had bet all of our pre-bets so far in 2019 and you tuned in for all the live betting events, you'd be up around £4,600 so far, which is real solid start. February was the first real month really where the MMA season kicked off, so we've kind of done that in not much more than a month really, so I'm really happy with the start to the year. And we've got one leg we need to cash on UFC Wichita to cash about 3.6 units profit to close that open parlay with Macy Chasen. So things have started really well, lots of profit. If you are interested in joining, guys, check out the website prommabetting.com. All the packages are listed on there, really easy to buy a service. The common package that people buy is the monthly. Just try us out for a month, doesn't cost too much, see how you find it. Tune into the live betting events as well, because that is the closest thing you will find to free money. It's kind of almost guaranteed, but you get the pre-betting tips as well. And please give us a follow on Twitter at ProMMABetting, and please hit the subscribe button on YouTube. We produce podcasts weekly for every UFC show, give you our predictions. We've done well again this week. We went 9-3 on total predictions, so our success rate in terms of picking winners across whole UFC cards still really high. So we're going to move on there and talk about UFC Wichita. First fight of the night is up in the heavyweight division. We've got Maurice Greene taking on Jeff Hughes, who's going to be making his UFC debut. So stat-wise, Maurice Greene has about 5-inch height advantage. He's also got a 4-inch reach advantage, slight weight advantage, but pretty much doesn't make any difference being heavyweights, like around £8 based on what their last weigh-ins were. Maurice Greene we saw make his UFC debut back in November against Mikel Batista. Won the fight very quickly with a triangle choke, got taken down but quickly locked up the triangle, pulled the win out the bag. We saw him on The Ultimate Fighter. He beat a Polish guy, I can't remember how to pronounce his name, but I know him from the UK scene. Took him out quickly in the first round, and then he lost to Juan Espino, who actually went on to win The Ultimate Fighter. Got choked out very quickly in the first round, and then a quick win over Mikel Batista in his debut. These two have actually fought before. They fought back in April 2018, so less than a year ago. I couldn't actually find the fight. I only found highlights of the fight and managed to read a report, but sounds like it was fairly competitive on the feet. But Jeff Hughes got the better of the wrestling in the fight, basically. Jeff, we've seen on the Dana White Contender Series, got a quick first round knockout win over Josh Appelt. So Jeff's coming in with a little bit of momentum. He's obviously got the win less than a year ago. I'm not sure how much Moraes has improved. He's been on the Ultimate Fighter since, so possibly there's been some improvements there. But he did have the quick loss on the Ultimate Fighter show. Jeff trains with Stipe Miocic, so he's getting some high level training in. As you probably know if you're a regular listener, I'm not a fan of low level heavyweight fights, especially when it comes to betting, just because one punch can just change everything in the heavyweight division, especially when it's lower level. Looking at the line, Jeff is -220 favourite, which is probably around right based on him having already beaten Green in less than a year ago. But no chance I bet on a heavyweight as a -220 favourite when it's low level. So I'm going to pick Jeff Hughes to win another decision. The last fight was a 5-rounder. This is only 3 rounds. But Jeff Hughes via decision for me. We move to the men's lightweight division next. We've got Alex White taking on Dan Moret. So Dan Moret trains out of the MMA lab, 32 years of age, 13-4 record. Made his UFC debut just under a year ago, back in April 2018 against Gilbert Burns, where he got knocked out early in the second round. Looking at Dan's record, he's got 1 KO win, 8 submission wins, so seems to be more of a sub-grappler. Hard for me to get a full handle on Dan because I struggled to find a lot of his recent fights. I couldn't find the Alec Gilpin fight, the Derrick Adams fight I couldn't find. Alonso Martinez fight is available, but it's over in a minute, so it's hard to gauge much from a fight that's over so quickly. He also lost to Barcelos, who has looked fantastic in the UFC so far. The Brazilian chap got KO'd early in the second round, much like what happened with Gilbert Burns. So he's also lost to Luke Sanders in the past. So kind of, I mean, I know Gilbert Burns isn't really a power puncher, power striker, but the way that fight played out, if you'd never seen Burns before, that you'd kind of assume that's his style. So just kind of looking over his record, lost to Sanders, Barcelos and Burns, seems to struggle with strikers if he can't get the fight to the floor, is the assumption that I would make there, from the lack of tape. Alex White's been in the UFC for a while now, 12-5 professional record. He has struggled in the UFC. If we look at his record, he's 3-4. He's beaten Payan, Lobov and Mitch Clark. Kind of lost whenever he's taken a step up. Jim Miller, James Krause, Anthony Rocco Martin, Clay Collard, maybe not such a step up, and Lucas Martin. So it's a tough fight to call, this one. Looking at the odds, as we always look from a betting perspective, Alex White's -190 favourite. I definitely wouldn't feel comfortable betting Alex White as such a wide favourite. He does have solid stand-up. He's got decent hands, so I'd give the edge to him if he can keep this standing. Dan Moret is a MMA lab guy, so you can expect him to be tough, scrappy. He's going to try and get this fight to the floor, I would assume. His takedown defense isn't too bad. It sits at 67%. He has stuffed a number of takedowns against the likes of Anthony Martin and James Krause. So, and they've both actually moved up to welterweight since then as well. So I don't know if Dan Moret's going to have an easy time getting Alex to the mat. This probably is a loser leaves town fight as well. Moret lost his UFC debut, got knocked out. It's not a great start. Alex is coming off 2 losses, got blown away by Jim Miller very quickly in his last fight, got hurt and on the feet and subbed. So I'm gonna go with Alex White to be able to keep this fight on the feet enough to win. I think Danny's gonna. I don't think he's gonna be able to get him down and keep him down easily. And if he gets involved in a firefight with him, been knocked out twice in his last 4 fights against a higher standard than Alex White, but Alex's stand-up isn't bad. I think maybe Jim Miller just caught him a bit cold. Before that fight, the only time he's been stopped with strikes was Lucas Martins back in July 2014. I know Jim Miller didn't stop him with strikes, but he did hurt him on the feet. But I think he's the better striker here, and I'm gonna go with Alex White to win this. But I definitely don't fancy paying nearly -200 on Alex White. Next, men's welterweight division, Alex Morono, Zach Otto. So the theme is continuing of low-level fights here on the Wichita card. First 3 fights, not ones I'm overly keen on. Alex Morono, we've seen in the UFC a number of times now, same as Zach as well. Similar in stats in the sense that they're both 5'11", same reach, 72 inches, they're both orthodox. Zach is around 4 years older. Significant strikes for Alex is up at over 4, Zach's at around 2.5. Absorb a similar amount of strikes per minute, significant strikes per minute, around 2.5. Alex has attempted no takedowns in the UFC, so you know he's going to want this fight on the feet. Zach Otto's takedown accuracy 25%, Alex's takedown defense 40%, and Zach Otto is 57%. So Alex has a 15-5 record. He's only been stopped once, 1 KO loss in his career. That came back a few years ago, back in Legacy, so not been stopped in over 5 years. He's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fights in the UFC now. He's coming off a win over Keenan Song. Keenan, not the greatest fighter, but did kind of answer a few questions regarding Morono. He has struggled with his gas tank. He's slowed down in a lot of fights. His gas seemed to be okay in that fight, so I don't know whether that's something he's now managing better. He's improved. I always find that if a fighter gasses, it's a theme. It's normally an inherent problem and not so much something that they can fix just by working on their cardio in the gym. Either they don't relax while they're fighting, they tense up when they're throwing shots, or on the receiving end of shots. They don't breathe correctly while they're fighting. Sometimes it's just real difficult things to fix, or just some people inherently just can't have great cardio due to biological matters. So I always find it's interesting and difficult for someone to fix a problem that's been reoccurring regarding their cardio. But it did look okay against Song, but I'm not going to kind of buy into the fact that he's now a cardio machine. Prior to that, he lost a lackluster fight against Jordan Mine where he got pretty much wrestle fucked in it. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, but it seems like it might be a bit of a McDojo black belt to me. I mean, the way Jordan Mine was just able to take him down and control him wasn't particularly encouraging. Before that fight, I mean, all we'd really seen predominantly is him in stand-up fights. Beat Kyle Noak. I haven't rewatched that fight recently, but I remember watching it live and thinking he was lucky to win that decision. He beat James Muntsari, who James really gassed badly in that fight. And I know I was talking about Morono's cardio not being great, but James is even worse, and yeah, cost him that fight. He really slowed down. Niko Price knocked him out at the end of the second round. So actually, I said he's only been KO'd once in his career. He is twice, albeit that fight was changed to a no contest. I think Niko got popped. He was winning that fight. First round he looked good. He dropped Niko. He did start to slow down in round 2 though, and Niko was starting to catch up with him. And then ultimately he got put out cold right at the end of the second round. He then had a competitive fight with Nakamura on the feet, lost a split decision, very close fight, quick win over a shot Josh Berkman. Then he lost to Jordan Mine in the aforementioned fight, and he's got a decision win over Keenan Song. So besides a shot Josh Berkman, he's not stopped anyone in the UFC, so he's not a huge puncher. As I said, hasn't attempted a takedown, so he's content to spend fights on the feet. Zach Otto, 17-6 record, low KO ratio, much like Morono, but Zach has been KO'd 3 times, been submitted once, so in those 6 losses, 4 are inside the distance. He is, I mean, if you look at his UFC career, it's basically win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. Made his debut against Josh Berkman, who already mentioned was knocked out by, submitted rather, by Morono, won a split decision. I think it was a pretty clear unanimous decision, don't really see why that was split. Lost to Sérgio Moraes in Brazil, a split decision, which I actually think Zach could have got that decision. I thought that was a decent performance from him over in Brazil. Then he beat Kunimoto, split decision. Again, not sure why that was a split decision. I thought that was pretty clear that he won 2 of the rounds there. Then he lost to Jinglang Wei, got stopped early in the first round with strikes. Then he beat a very, very shot Mike Pyle in the first round. Then he got KO'd by Sage Northcutt. So this does start to give you some questions about his punch durability and how much he likes being hit. Because the Jinglang Wei, I mean, Lee does hit hard, but the way he covered up in that fight wasn't overly convincing. And then being KO'd by Sage Northcutt isn't a great look. Sérgio Moraes rocked him as well at one point. So there's definite question marks with regards to his chin, and he kind of fought like a bit of a worried fighter with regards to his durability against Dwight Grant. He scraped a split decision win there back in December. Most people thought he lost that fight. It was a very uneventful fight. I wasn't impressed by either of them in that fight. So I think Zach needs to get this fight to the floor. I think he will lose on the feet. I think he'll be out-volumed. And as I said, he doesn't seem particularly fond of getting hit. So he is going to need this on the mat, in my opinion. As I said, the way Jordan Mine was just taking him down doesn't fill him with confidence. Nakamura hit 2 out of 2 takedowns as well. So I'm not sold on Morono's takedown defense, but Zach Otto offensively with his wrestling, 25% takedown accuracy. It's a low-level fight. I'm going to go with Morono. I think he's going to win a decision. I think it's going to be primarily a kickboxing fight. I think Zach might struggle to get this to the mat. And I think he will lose on the feet. I think he'll be out-volumed. I'm not sure if Morono will stop him. I'd probably go for Morono decision. But looking at the odds, Morono is a minus 230 favourite. There's no way I'm playing Alex Morono at minus 230. It's definitely a dog or pass situation for me. But I don't really fancy betting Zach Otto either. Low level fight. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? I've given you my thoughts on what I think will happen, but who knows with these lower level guys. I've bet Zach Otto once in the past. It was against Kunimoto. I thought he clearly won. I didn't think it was a split, but I remember I think he kept throwing kicks that were caught and he was getting taken down of them, and he just kept doing it, and it was just like, fight IQ, buddy, come on. So I'm gonna pick Morono by decision. Next we go to the men's bantamweight division. We've got Matt Schnell taking on Louis Smolka. Louis is 5'9", Matt Schnell 5'8". Schnell has a 2-inch reach advantage at 70 inches. Both similar amount of significant strikes landed per minute, both getting on for 4. Both absorbed a similar amount, around 3.5 significant strikes per minute. Takedown average, Schnell doesn't really try takedowns, tries 0.39 per fight. Smolka higher, he's just under 2. 34% takedown accuracy for Smolka. Schnell down at 25%. Louis Smolka's takedown defense really low, 31%. Matt Schnell's at 54%. So this is a bantamweight fight. Both have historically fought at flyweight. I think Louis will be the bigger guy. I know he used to have a big cut down to flyweight. Schnell, I think, has a smaller frame. I don't think he had as many problems making the weight. If we look at Matt Schnell, he made his UFC debut at 135. Ever since, his next 3 fights are at 125. Got absolutely wrecked by Rob Font. Then he got knocked out by Hector Sandoval in his next fight. His fight before his UFC debut against Clayton Mai. It might have been the first time he fought Clayton Mai actually, but he got rocked in that fight as well, and Clayton Mai isn't a big puncher. So there's big chin issues for Matt Schnell. He's rebounded though. He's won 2 fights in a row, 2 competitive fights against Marco Beltran and Naoki Inoue, both stand-up fights, hence the lack of takedown attempts as we just mentioned on his fight stats. So he's content to stand and trade. Louis Smolka has fought at a higher level, and when he has stepped up, he's been more competitive. He's been in there with Brandon Moreno, albeit he got guillotined really quickly in that fight, went for a takedown and just left his neck out there. He got grapple fucked by Ray Bull, grapple fucked by Tim Elliott. I say he's been more competitive when he stepped up. Maybe he hasn't. He's been going to decisions, but he then lost to Pereira as well. I mean, the Bull, Elliott and Pereira fights were all pretty much one-way traffic. He then won 3 in a row outside the UFC and came back, I think it was for the China card back in November, and got a dominant submission victory over a Chinese fighter making his UFC debut, or a Chinese fighter, an Asian fighter. I'm not sure if he was Chinese, but hard to glean much from that. Not sure how good or bad that guy was. Before he went on that four losses in a row in the UFC, he did beat Ben 10. Real savage beatdown in that fight of Ben. Really good performance. He beat Patrick Houlihan the fight before that. I remember that was like a pick'em line, and I bet Smolka in that. I was very confident of him there. He beat Neil Seary as well, and I did bet him all the way back in November 2014 against Richie Vakulik, the Australian chap, and I got really lucky in that fight. He was 2 rounds down and managed to pull out a Shawn Michaels type switching music KO in the 3rd round. So this is a really difficult fight for me to call. Matt Schnell is going to want the fight on the feet. I don't think he's going to. Matt's pretty good on the ground from what I've seen, pretty good submission skills, but just it seems like he's content to keep fights standing. He's probably got better stand up than Louis Smolka. Louis stand up isn't great. It's just going to be a case of whether Louis can get Matt to the mat or not. If we just look at the stats for Matt, so 54% takedown defense. In a way, only tried 1 takedown. When he faced Beltran, he hit 1 of 1. Sandoval, I think Sandoval took him down. I think there was a guillotine attempt. 3 of 8 Sandoval hit in that fight, and that was over in 1 round. And I think Rob Font took him down as well. 1 of 1. So I'm not sure if he rocked him before he took him down. So I definitely give Matt the advantage on the feet. It's just going to be whether Louis can get his grappling going here. But even then, the problem with Louis is he's really loose on the mat. He's not very defensively sound. I remember he did struggle to get his last opponent down. The stats say he hit 2 out of 5, but I remember it was quite an effort for him to get those takedowns. So I'm going to pick Schnell here. I'm not sure kind of what Schnell is going to do moving forward, because he's very chinny. I think he will get away with it here against Louis. Louis got 6 KO wins on his record, but I mean, I know the Ben 10 one was from ground and pound. He got a doctor's stoppage when he left the UFC, and he got a TKO very quickly over a chap, his first fight after getting cut, but that guy, it was his first ever MMA fight, so can't read much into that at all. So yeah, he's not a big puncher, so Matt's chin should be okay in this fight, but yeah, I don't think he's suited to 135. I remember when he fought Font, you could tell the size difference was massive, but technically his stand-up's actually decent, so I think he's going to do enough on the feet here. I think he'll be able to keep it on the feet for the majority of the fight, and as I say, even if Smolka can get him down, he is very, very loose positionally. It's, you know, even when he wins fights, I mean, he was getting out-grappled by Ben 10 at first until he took over. Patrick Houlihan was pretty competitive with him on the floor. It's only really like Neil Seery who he dominated on the mat, but Neil is predominantly a boxer really. So I'm gonna pick Schnell to win a decision here, but this could be a close competitive fight, and I don't really know where Schnell goes moving forward if they are getting rid of the flyweight division, because I don't think he's suited to bantamweight, and I mean same for Smolka. Even though he's the bigger guy, I think they're both going to struggle moving forward, moving up the talent pool at bantamweight, but I'm going to pick Schnell by decision here. Next fight is the men's featherweight division. It's Grant Dawson making his UFC debut, taking on Julian Erosa, who you all probably know by now. He's kind of been in and out of the UFC. It's his second stint in the UFC. He's coming off a real devastating KO loss to Devontae Smith. He beat Jamal Emmers on the Contender Series to get back in the UFC. His first UFC run, he got knocked out by Teruto Ishihara, coming off of the Ultimate Fighter Series. He fought on Cage Warriors against Paddy Pimblett, lost the decision there, but I think he should have won that decision, to be fair. It was a bit of a hometown decision there for Paddy, but ultimately this is a fight I'm actually making no prediction on. I've struggled to find tape on Grant. The only kind of recentish tape I could find, his last fight's available against Adrian Diaz, and there's a knockout loss to Hugh Pulley that's available, that was about 3 years ago now, but it's over in 30 seconds, so it's hard to glean much from it. He's not fought for 18 months, he's only 25. You know, who knows what type of improvements he's made in the last 18 months, and being such a young guy, it's just really difficult fight for me to get a handle on. Not really sure how anyone can be too confident betting in this fight. Dawson is the favourite, -190, Erosa +165. Yeah, it's just a pass fight for me. I just can't get a handle on it with the lack of tape I can find, so I'm just going to pass on this one, guys. Having said that, I think the Christian Camp fight is available, because that looks like it's Victory Fighting, which is on Fight Pass, but again, that's like 2.5 years ago. It's not a high caliber of fighter. He's got a 5-8 record, so I think I actually passed, because it's just hard to gauge how good this guy is. There's a fight with Robert Washington available as well on Titan, but that is 3 years ago. He's only 22. I mean, the guy, Robert Washington's 19 and 11, so you know, probably a decent test for someone at that stage of their career. But yeah, it's a fight I'm ultimately passing on, just because I don't feel I have a full handle on Grant Dawson. I mean, I do want Erosa, but Grant, yeah, I want to see what he's done with his time off. I think he got popped, but ultimately it got overturned, so he shouldn't have had this layoff. But you've got to think there's improvement, so you probably do have to favour Grant here. But yeah, it's a hard one to get a handle on, and he is a submission guy as well. Rosa likes to keep it on the feet, so you know, how much has his stand up improved in the last 18 months? Probably the question here. So, but yeah, I'm passing. I just don't feel like I've got a solid handle on this fight. Next, the women's bantamweight division, the only women's fight on the card. We've got Yana Kunitskaya taking on Marion Reneau. So Kunitskaya, very, very tough UFC debut against Cyborg, got taken out in the first round. Since then she fought and beat Lena Landsberg, actually beat Lena at her own game, so it was fairly impressive. Lena loves the clinch, loves putting you on the fence, loves controlling fights, but Kunitskaya actually beat her at that game, won the clinch battles, hit takedowns, top control. So, you know, fairly impressive in the sense that she beat Lena at that, because Lena is a very strong girl in the clinch, so that was fairly impressive. We saw Invicta take on Tonya Avinja twice. She armbarred Tonya the first time, ultimately got ruled a no contest. It was a bit of a bizarre one. Tonya was standing on her face to try and prevent the armbar. I think the ref said she couldn't do that, but ultimately she could, so they ended up ruling it a no contest. In the rematch, she pretty much got dominated, got taken down, and ultimately got choked out. Didn't look too good from the bottom. I think she used to be at Jackson Wink, but she's actually over at Extreme Couture now doing her camp. So she's taking on Marion Reneau here. I mean, stat-wise, these are pretty similar in terms of height and reach, but age, big thing. Marion is 41 now. She's around 12 years older. I think she's a teacher as well, so I don't think she trains full time. She's coming off a loss to Katzengano, where ultimately she pretty much just got wrestled in it. Spent a lot of time on bottom, which is kind of a common theme for Marion fights. If we go back to her UFC debut, she beat Alexis Dumfriesny. I don't recall that fight. I didn't go that far back and watch it. Jessica Andrade, she triangled. She got dropped, but triangled Andrade. Lost to Holly Holm in a striking match. Like Holly clearly won, but it wasn't overly one-sided. Ashley Evans-Smith, she lost a split decision to, which was a very controversial decision loss. She's beat Milana Dadiva, third round stoppage. Talita Bernardo she beat. I remember that fight. She was getting taken down early in the fight. Talita ultimately ended up gassing and she got pummeled from top position. Sarah McMahon again was getting taken down early, but she cracked Sarah McMahon in the second round, really hurt her standing, and managed to latch up a triangle when a hurt Sarah took her down. So she's got some power on her feet for a lady. She's dangerous off of her back, but her takedown defense is really, really poor. Yana does have solid takedowns. So I imagine the game plan here for Yana is she'll throw her kicks at range, but she needs to be careful she doesn't have them caught. I noticed in quite a lot of her fights her kicks were caught. She wasn't necessarily getting taken down off them, but there's a danger there. If your kick gets caught, you will get taken down, and Marion is good from top position. She's got really good ground and pound, and from looking at the Tonya Avinja fight, Yana doesn't look that great off her back, so there's a danger that she could end up on her back here if she does throw lazy kicks that are caught easily. But I imagine Yana's going to want to get her cage grind going. I imagine she's going to be able to physically overpower Marion. She will be able to mix in takedowns, I would imagine, just because Marion's takedown defense isn't the best, and the kind of general MO on her fights is she is on her back. So Yana does need to be careful because Marion is dangerous off her back. Also notice some of the takedowns Yana ends up completing against the fence. She ends up dropping down to both knees while she's trying to pull the legs out. Makes me a little worried that Marion could kind of scramble to her back if she does that. So she needs to be very careful when she's looking for them takedowns that she doesn't end up giving her back up. But ultimately I am going to pick Yana to win a decision here. People I chat to who I respect regarding betting seem fairly confident in Yana. She's a -165 favourite. Not sure I share that same confidence enough to bet her. Marion, she can crack. We saw her hurt Boetsch career as well. I think that was with a head kick. She hurt Sarah McMahon with a punch, and she is dangerous off her back. So she's not. Marion doesn't have a particularly fluid MMA game, but she is fairly opportunistic with the submissions from her back, and she can land power shots standing. But I think, yeah, you've got to go lean to Kunitskaya here, just because I think she is the kind of better overall mixed martial artist in terms of putting her game together. So I'm going to go with Kunitskaya to win a decision, but she needs to be careful on the mat, and she needs from top position, and she does need to be careful with her takedowns. I don't want to see her drop into 2 knees and possibly giving Marion the opportunity to take her back. But ultimately I'm going to go with Kunitskaya to grind her up against the fence and mix in takedowns and ultimately have enough control time to win a decision here. Next, men's welterweight division, we've got Anthony Rocco Martin, as he is now known, taking on Sérgio Moraes. So Anthony is in the welterweight division now, moved up from the lightweight division. He's coming off a solid win over Jake Matthews. Decent performance there, managed to put Matthews to sleep early in the 3rd round. I actually remember betting Anthony in that fight, live betting him after the 2nd round, because I can't remember what the odds were. I think he was about a 2 to 1 dog, and I had it 1-0. Ultimately the judges actually all had Jake Matthews 2 up. There was definitely some home cooking there, because I thought it was pretty clear that it was 1-0. But yeah, Jake got submitted early in the 3rd round, so that was impressive submission win for him there. He's actually 3-0 as a welterweight now. He beat Nakamura, he beat Ryan LaFleur, caught Ryan LaFleur with a head kick, and he's coming off the win over Jake Matthews. He's sitting as a -200 favourite, which to me, I think there's maybe just a bit of kind of recency bias there in terms of, you look at his record, he's 3-0 as a welterweight, so it looks great, but I'm just not sold on his takedown defence. That's how he lost to Olivier Mercier down at lightweight, got out grappled for the first 2 rounds, and in the Nakamura fight, Nakamura hit 4 easy takedowns in that fight. Now Nakamura's fight IQ was terrible in that fight. He was only going for takedowns at the end of the round. Anthony was attempting Kimura's to get back to his feet and reverse position, which I don't think that's going to work against Sérgio. Sérgio's grappling is on another level to Nakamura. Kimura sweeps and so forth, I just can't see them working. We've not really seen his takedown defence tested since the Nakamura fight, which is getting on for a year ago. He's been at ATT for a while now. I think he does a fair bit of work with Colby Covington, so his takedown defence could have improved since the Nakamura fight, but that fight really rang alarm bells for me. What he does have going for him is Sérgio Moraes' fight IQ isn't the best. I went through and watched pretty much most of his UFC run, and he doesn't go for takedowns nearly as much as he should, considering how high level he is on the mat. But having said that, against Ben Saunders, he did go for takedowns and absolutely dominated him, and that was his last fight. So have we seen some improvement in his fight IQ? Possibly. Fight before that he fought Tim Means, and I'm just checking, but I think he attempted 1 takedown the whole fight, which just seems crazy to me. Usman, okay, that's a tough fight. David Ramos, great grappler, okay. But like Zach Otto, I mean, it was close standing. I actually gave that fight to Zach Otto. I thought it was really close, but I mean, he only attempted 3 takedowns against Zach Otto, and I think one of them was off of a caught kick. He just doesn't go for the takedowns enough. It's quite surprising. He couldn't get Chagas down, went 0 for 4. So yeah, I mean, he doesn't go for takedowns as much as he should, and his takedowns aren't particularly great either. But for someone with his ground prowess, you'd expect him to try and mix in the takedowns more. So I would not be shocked if he just stood pretty much with with Tony Martin or Anthony Rocco Martin here for 3 rounds, and Sérgio stand-up isn't particularly good, but he's very unorthodox. He throws kind of winging shots, and he does have a bit of power. So he is quite awkward to fight in that sense. So where he just doesn't strike conventionally. And you saw that he did give kind of Tim Means a few problems. It took Tim Means a little while to work him out. Maybe Tim was a bit worried about the takedown threat as well. So yeah, there might be a little feeling out process there just for Anthony, just to get his timing going. But he does have a really good jab. I'm just checking on the stats. I think he's going to have a reach advantage. It's only an inch actually, and they are the same height. I thought Martin was taller, but same height, only an inch reach advantage. So yeah, he's just got to be careful he's not getting caught by these winging shots, because they are power shots and they will score well with the judges, as opposed to jabs from Martin, where it's not seen as a bigger power strike. The big winging shot is probably going to count more in the judge's eyes. So he's just got to be a little bit careful, but he's definitely the better technician, and his stand-up has looked really good at welterweight, but he's minus 200 favourite now, and I just don't trust his takedown defence at all. And I mean, someone mentioned to me that maybe Nakamura was kind of giving up the takedown to Nakamura to go for the Kimuras, but I mean, that just rings even more alarm bells. He's crazy enough to attempt that. Nakamura's a decent grappler. That just reeks of overconfidence, of arrogance, in fact. I mean, you surely wouldn't expect him to try that here, but someone did mention that he spoke about Sérgio only being good in the gi and he can Kimura him. I mean, it's probably hyperbole, but yeah, I would have liked to have seen his takedown tested since the Nakamura fight to see if it has improved. I just can't take the risk of betting him as a minus 200 favourite. I am picking him to win here. I think he will win a decision, but I hope Sérgio fights intelligently here, does try and mix in the takedowns, because it will give us a better indicator as to how Anthony's takedown defence is coming along, even though Sérgio isn't the best takedown guy. But yeah, I think on the feet he wins this fight against Sérgio, and I don't trust Sérgio to fight intelligently enough and look to utilise his ground game to bet him as a dog. So yeah, I'm going to pick Martin to win a decision here, but I don't like the price. So next we've got, on the first fight on the main card at middleweight, we've got Tim Boetsch taking on Omari Akhmedov. Tim Boetsch, former light heavyweight, Omari, former welterweight, and now they're meeting in the middleweight division. Tim is 38 years of age now, definitely getting towards the end of his career. They both stand at 6 foot. Tim's got a 1 inch reach advantage. It's about 6 years or so older. Significant strikes landed per minute. They're both sitting at around 3. They're both sitting at around 3 significant strikes absorbed per minute as well. Omari goes for takedowns a bit more than Tim. He's up at nearly 3 takedown attempts per 15 minutes, 50% takedown accuracy. Tim is about 1.5 takedowns attempted per 15 minutes with a 35% takedown accuracy. Both similar takedown defense in the 50% range basically. So we saw Omari move up his last fight, his first fight at middleweight, where he took on Marvin Vettori. It was over a year ago now. I'm not sure why Omari's been out for so long, but basically the basis for Omari's game is his stand-up, kind of just talking about Sérgio Moraes throwing winging hooks. Omari's the same. He throws everything into every shot. They are kind of telegraphed punches. They're big looping shots, but although he's got 7 KOs, actually more than I thought, he does have some power on them shots. You don't really want to be taking them shots flush. He was giving Marvin Vettori problems with them in the first couple of rounds, but the problem with Omari is he does gas, because he throws everything into every strike. He slows down pretty much every fight. We saw it in the Vettori fight. He got pummeled in the 3rd round. Slowed down against Razak. Slowed down against Zaleski, who ultimately stopped him in the 3rd round. Sérgio Moraes actually one punched him in the third round in a fight he was 2 rounds up in. I think the move to middleweight is probably a good move for Omari. He definitely doesn't look a small middleweight, so I imagine he was struggling to make the welterweight limit, but his cardio didn't seem to have improved, which is something that when someone moves up you do look to see if their cardio's improved, particularly if it has been an issue before, and didn't improve against Vettori. But he was landing some clean shots on Vettori and I thought Vettori was going to win that fight fairly convincingly. So the guy's got some power, his wrestling's okay, but gas tank a big issue for him. I'm not sure how good is his chin. He's got 2 KO losses. All his losses he's been stopped. 2 KO losses, 2 submission losses. Gunnar Nelson dropped him and ultimately submitted him. Sérgio Moraes one punched him. Zaleski finished him in the third round. They were all at welterweight though. Was the cut taking something out of his chin? He took some punishment off Marvin Vettori, but Marvin isn't a big puncher, and he ultimately lasted to a decision there where it was a draw. He lost the third round 10-8. But yeah, I'm not convinced. And his chin seems to deteriorate the more tired he gets. Boetsch has power. It's called a barbarian for a reason. Very physically strong man. Definitely on the downside of his career though. 21-12 record. It's been stopped in 9 of those 12 losses. Hasn't been to a decision in his last 10 fights, so he's kind of turned into kill or be killed. I think durability is diminishing for him. I don't like the Ed Herman KO loss he has on his record. Got caught with a knee up the middle and put out by Ed Herman. Fight before that, one punch by Dan Henderson, which obviously a lot of people have suffered that fate, so it's not can't really say someone's chinny because of that, but still, I still think the durability has waned a bit for him. I remember betting on Brad Tavares years ago, and Tavares was absolutely coasting, and then he just caught Tavares out of nowhere in the second round, and much the same when he took on Yushin Okami. He was getting outboxed for 2 rounds, like completely dominated, pulled a KO out of nowhere. He's recently stopped. In his last 5 fights, he's won 3, lost 2. He's stopped Hendricks, Natal, and Josh Salmon. Hendricks and Natal kind of retired not long thereafter, so he definitely wasn't stopping them in their prime. Josh Salmon, I won't comment on kind of what happened thereafter with him, but yeah, it's not like he's been beating guys that are in their prime. He's the last kind of prime fighter he beat was Brad Tavares, which was back in August 2014, and Omari is in his prime. He's not a diminished fighter. I think he's fighting at kind of the level he's at currently, which is the top level he's going to reach. So it's a hard fight to call, this one. I'm worried that if Tim gets hit by these bombs from Omari that he could go down. But Tim's got the better gas tank and Tim's got power himself. Has Omari been hit by someone with Tim's power? I don't think he has. Tim's a harder hitter than Marvin Vettori. Can Omari get his takedowns going? Tim has struggled on the ground, but I mean, I think he can survive against Omari. I mean, Jacare, Carlos Jr., Tails Latis all managed to submit him in recent-ish fights. Luke Rockhold as well, but you know, they're all beasts on the mat. Omari I wouldn't put into that category. So I don't see this going the distance. I definitely think this ends inside the distance. Let's see what the odds are on doesn't go to a decision. Wow, -175. That's actually pretty appetising. I'd definitely be interested in looking at that, because I do think someone's chin is going to foul them here. I line this as a pick and fight. Tim Boetsch and +125 underdog at the moment. I definitely would have been interested when the lines first opened. He was +175, and my gut definitely liked that price, but I just didn't get around to watching tape. I am going to pick Tim to win here, just because he is the underdog, so I'm going to go with Tim. I think it is a 50-50 fight. I think it's going to come down to who lands first, or who takes the punches better. Omari's not felt the power of someone like Tim. I just hope, Tim probably is going to get clipped himself. I just hope his chin holds up. He's very physically strong, Tim, as well. So again, Omari's probably facing someone physically stronger than anyone he's faced before. So this is kind of although Vettori's a younger, fresher, more dynamic fighter, Tim does hit harder, and I think he's probably physically stronger. So there's some unknowns going into this for Omari, being only his second fight up at middleweight. So yeah, it's a hard fight to call, but I'm going to go with Tim by knockout. I think especially if he can get this into the second round, where Omari starts to slow down, some steam will start coming off of his punches as well. He'll be more hittable, and as I said, a few round 3 losses for Omari. It's like as he gets more tired, his chin deteriorates. So I'm going to go with Tim by knockout here. We move to the men's lightweight division next. We've got Beneil Dariush taking on Drew Dober. Quick look over the stats. Dariush 2-inch height advantage, 2-inch reach advantage. They're both southpaws, similar age, both around the 4 significant strikes landed per minute mark. In terms of absorbed, Dariush around 2.5. Drew is actually up at 4, so fairly hittable. Takedown average, Dariush averages 1.5 takedown attempts per 15 minutes. Drew is at 1. 30% takedown accuracy for Dariush, only 17% for Drew. Don't really remember him trying takedowns really outside of the fight with the chap from the MMA lab, Scott Holtzman. And Dariush takedown defense 80%, Drew Dober 60%, but Dariush's takedown defense isn't going to come into it here. Drew's going to want to keep this fight standing. So if we look at Beneil Dariush to start with, he trains out of King's MMA. He's got really solid stand up from southpaw stance. He's got really good kicks. Very serviceable on the feet. He was, if you guys recall, the Edson Barboza fight, which is a couple of years ago now, where he got brutally knocked out in the second round with a flying knee. I bet Barboza in that fight, and Dariush was cruising on the feet. He was well on his way to being 2 rounds up. He outstruck Rashid Magomedov. He absolutely starched James Vick. I bet him against James Vick, and it just blew him away. He's got a split decision win over Michael Johnson. He did lose that fight, controversial decision there. But still, he hung with Michael on the feet for 3 rounds. He's got some really good wins. Carlos Diego Ferreira, Darren Cruikshank, Jim Miller, and he mixes in his grappling and using his striking. He grappled Carlos Diego Ferreira. He grappled Anthony Martin. He grappled Jim Miller. He couldn't get Michael Johnson down. He was forced to stand there, and got a lucky decision there. Just came out real aggressive, took James Vick out. Forced to stand with Magomedov, a difficult guy to take down, but he won the striking. Same with Barboza. Same with Dunham, really. Had a really strong first round, but then he gassed. Got blown away very quickly by Alexander Hernandez early in the first round, and he used a grapple heavy approach against Thiago Moises in his last fight. Just fucked him for 3 rounds basically. The knocks on, so Dariush, he's a very solid striker, and he's got a very high level grappling game as well. Wrestling isn't the best, so he's kind of struggled to blend the two at the higher level. Knocks on Omari's chin. He's had really bad knockout losses to Edson Barboza and Hernandez, both real brutal knockouts. So you've definitely got to have some concerns about his chin. He was knocked out by Ramsey Nijam back in April 2014 as well. So the chin is definitely an issue for Dariush, and he has gassed in some fights as well. Now, he used a real grapple heavy approach last fight and he was fine, but we did see him slow down, for example, in the Michael Chiesa fight at a really strong first round, but started to blow in that fight. And same with Evan Dunham, really strong first round, won it 10-8, but kind of slowed down after trying to finish Evan and let him back into the fight. So he's a very solid fighter, but chin and cardio are two big concerns, especially if you're a bettor. You really don't want to be betting on someone that you're hoping doesn't gas, or if you're worried about their chin. But I did like his approach to his last fight. Whether that is because he is aware of the chin issue and he is now going to take a more grappling heavy approach, maybe so, but like I said, he does struggle with the takedowns at the higher level against the guys with solid takedown defense. So as he steps back through the levels, he is going to have that chin tested again, and I just think it's going to be a liability for him, unfortunately. He's taking on Drew Dober here, who is going to want to stand with him. Drew has a 20-8 record. He's only got 4 KOs on his record, but I think that's a little bit misleading with regards to his power. I definitely think he has some power in his shots. I think it's something that possibly has improved with time for him, because in his last his last 5 fights, he's got 2 knockout wins. He blew away Jason Gonzalez on the feet, took him out real quick. And I know Josh Berkman's shot, but he one punched Josh Berkman, and when I saw that fight, it did just the way he one punched him, and it just gave me kind of an image of Dariush getting one punched here. Because I do favour Dariush in this fight. I'm not sold on Drew Dober's takedown defence. Frank Camacho took him down a few times. It was with foot sweeps, which I guess are a bit unconventional, and maybe if you don't expect it and someone's very good at them, they can catch you with them. But yeah, Frank Camacho did take him down a few times. He was getting lit up on the feet as well by Olivier Mercier. I mean, he did drop him in the second round, and the ensuing scramble ended up being his demise. But in the first round, he got totally lit up on the feet. We did see Scott Holtzman take him down as well. I mean, ultimately he out-grappled Scott Holtzman in that fight, but there was a takedown in that fight. Haven't really seen his takedown defence tested much though outside of those fights. I didn't go back as far as the kind of first couple of fights with Spencer and Hine, but I imagine they were pretty much stand-up battles anyway. But yeah, from what we've seen, takedown defence doesn't look great, so Dariush could probably implement the strategy he used in his last fight here, but it is taxing on your cardio using that approach. But he did look fine last fight. On the feet, I think he wins the striking battle with Drew Dober, but it's just if he gets caught with a punch, how's his chin going to react? So yeah, he's a -175 favourite. It is tempting to bet Dariush here, but what strategy is he going to use? Is he going to be content to just stand with Dober? Because I think he can win a striking battle. As I said, the guy was out striking Barboza, beat Rashid on the feet as well. So he's very competent on the feet. But both are southpaws though, so his power kick to the body is not going to be available to him here, so that does take away a big weapon for him on the feet. I imagine he's going to be grapple heavy here, but I'd like the line a bit closer, I think, to take that risk, because on the feet I will be, if I've bet him, I'm just going to be bricking it for the whole 15 minutes in case he gets caught with something, because that chin is probably porcelain there. But like I said, based on his approach last fight, I think he knows he needs to protect it, and I think he will come out here and use a grappling heavy approach. I think he's going to win a decision over Dober by basically out grappling him. He might even nab a submission. He did get submitted by Mercier once Mercier got his back, and he did suffer a quick submission loss to Efren Escudero. So, in fact, I'm going to go Dariush to win by submission here, but I just don't know if I can bet him, just because the cardio concern and the glass jaw. As a bettor, they're two of the betting guidelines that I try and go by, or two of. And one is not betting on a chinny fighter. Obviously styles make fights, and there are places to bet fighters who perhaps don't have a great chin, but Dober's a striker, so is this the best place to risk that? And the cardio as well. Dober can go hard for 3 rounds. He trains at altitude, at elevation. Yeah, glass chin and a gassing fighter, 2 big red flags for me as a bettor. So I'd need the line to come in. But style-wise, I think it is a good fight for Dariush. So I'm going to go with Dariush, and I think he'll win by submission. Men's heavyweight division next. We've got Blagoy Ivanov taking on the returning Ben Rothwell, who we haven't seen for, it'll be 3 years. So real hard fight to get a call on. You've got to assume Ben hasn't improved in those 3 years. He's 37 years of age now. I know heavyweights do mature kind of a bit older, but 3 years out isn't ideal at that age, even at heavyweight. I'm going to be real quick with this breakdown because it's, as you know, I won't call this a low-level heavyweight fight, but heavyweight fights for me as a bettor are just generally fights that I avoid. Quick look at the betting line. It's pretty much an even line. I'm going to go with Ivanov just because he's fought more recently. Both their recent opponent is Junior Dos Santos. Both lost in a similar manner. I'd say Ben probably got dominated a bit more than Ivanov, but yeah, I'm going to go with Ivanov here, but I think it will go the distance. Ivanov's never been KO'd. Ben's, he has been stopped a few times in his career with strikes, but it's been a while. Cain Velasquez, which was 2009, and I remember that was more. I've not watched that fight for a long time, but I do remember. I think when I watched it live, I don't know how I remember this 10 years ago. Yeah, it was more a mercy stoppage from the referee in that fight. I thought it didn't really need to stop the fight. So, you go back to his last KO loss. It's Zaleski over 10 years ago. So he's durable, Ben. Ivanov's not been KO'd himself, so for a heavyweight fight, I think this is going to go the distance. But I think Ivanov he's been active more recently. Since Rothwell last fought, he's only had 4 fights himself. So yeah, hard fight to call. I'm not really overly interested in this fight. It's definitely a live bet fight from my perspective. So 3 years out for Ben. Who knows what version of Ben we're going to get off of his vitamin S or whatever he was on. So I'll go with Ivanov to win a decision here, but it's definitely not a confident prediction whatsoever. Men's welterweight division next. Tim Means taking on Niko Price. Quick look over the stats. Means 2-inch height advantage. Price 1-inch reach advantage. Tim's at nearly 5 significant strikes per minute. Niko's at 2.5. Strikes absorbed. Tim's around 3. Niko's at 4. Tim doesn't tend to go for takedowns. Averages less than 1 per 15 minutes. Niko's at 1.5 almost. Tim 63% takedown defense. Niko 75%. I think this is a good fight for Tim. Niko is in the UFC. He came in on, I think it was short notice, against Brandon Thatch. Took Thatch down and submitted him, which kind of everyone does to Thatch. He knocked out Alex Morono in a fight that he was losing, albeit starting to come back into as Morono was slowing down. Got ruled a no contest. I think Niko got popped for something. Had a real good win over Alan Jabane, knocked him out in the first round. Then he got dominated by Vicente Luque. He beat George Sullivan in a very fight he was losing, in fact, until he won. I bet Niko in that fight, and it was an awful sweat. He was really struggling in that fight. Won a very bizarre fight with Randy Brown, knocked him out with hammer fist from the bottom in a fight he was losing. Randy had him hurt at the end of the first round. You could see Niko walking back to his corner, pretty hurt, and then Razak sent him into another dimension. Brutal knockout loss last time out. He used to train at an ATT affiliate. He doesn't seem to be with them anymore. He's opened up his own gym now that he trains out of. So kind of a bit of a red flag there, really. Look, he's dangerous. He hits hard. We saw him. I mean, Alan Jabane doesn't have the best chin in the world, but it's still taking him out in the first round is pretty impressive. I mean, I can't say he has power based on KOing Brown with hammer fist from the bottom. I think that's just some kind of weird aligning of the stars that allowed that to happen. But nonetheless, it did happen, and he did put Morono out cold as well. So he's definitely got some power. But I just don't think he's a great fighter, Niko Price. I went through and watched all of his fights from the Morono fight in the UFC, and Morono it dropped him, was all over him on the feet, started to slow in the second round. Niko was coming back into it. Vicente Luque just dominated him, had him badly hurt, which allowed him to sink in the submission. George Sullivan fight, like I said, I bet on Niko in that fight, and George Sullivan just lost to Mickey Gall in 30 seconds and lost the fight on the regional scene, and he really struggled in that fight. He was losing to Randy Brown. He kind of, he's a dangerous guy in the sense that he pulls these wins out from losing positions pretty much every fight, and last fight he was knocked out brutally by Razak, so I've definitely got big concerns about his chin. He's coming back from a bad knockout loss, and prior to that we saw Randy Brown hurt him. I think George Sullivan might have even stunned him on the feet, if I remember rightly. Vicente Luque had him badly hurt. That's what allowed him to sink in the submission. Alex Morono dropped him. So I've got big concerns with his chin going into this fight with Tim Means. Tim Means, he's 35 years of age now, so how long he's got left I don't know. I wouldn't say he's looked like he's declining though. It's just he's a bit of a hard fighter to trust him. I haven't bet him since the Alex Garcia fight, where he lost the first round in that fight. Got caught with a big punch pretty early from Alex, who can bang, and he kind of seemed to take the round just to recover and get in his rhythm, and then ultimately boxed Garcia for the next 2 rounds. He had 2 controversial fights with, well, not both. The first fight with Alex Oliveira was controversial. He basically kneed Alex when he was grounded. He was looking really solid in that fight. Tim actually took Alex down, was being really aggressive, was landing some good shots against the fence, but kneed him when he was grounded, and luckily it was ruled a no contest. It should have been a disqualification because I bet him in that fight, so I should have lost there, but luckily I got a push. I didn't bet him in the rematch though, because the line was a lot wider than I thought it should have been. The first fight, it was more competitive than everyone seemed to think, and the line on Tim in the rematch wasn't justified in my opinion. Tim struggled in that fight. He said he broke his foot. I can't remember the exact injury. It was something foot related early in the fight, and he said it was very, very painful, and mentally it just affected him throughout the fight. He came back though. He beat Alex Garcia. He then lost a competitive stand-up fight with Belal Muhammad in Australia, I think that was, and then he lost to Sérgio Moraes over in Brazil in a fight that he was robbed in that fight. You look at the media scores, I think it was 13-1 in favour of Tim Means, but in Brazil there's a danger in a close fight you're going to be you're going to be robbed against a home fighter. He lost the first round, kind of took a little while to warm up in that one, so he can be a slow starter in some fights. We've seen it in the Sérgio fight, we saw it in the Alex Garcia fight, so it's something he does need to try and work on. And ultimately against Ricky Rainey it seemed like he had, because he came out like a man possessed in that fight and just pounded Ricky Rainey into the ground, took him out real quick. Kind of the Tim Means that I expect to see, the violent, aggressive Tim Means after he got robbed against Sérgio, lost a close decision to Beneil, but the performances were a little bit flat. I think with Sérgio as well, there was a takedown threat there that probably put some doubt in the back of his mind with regards to committing too much with his strikes, because you don't want to be underneath Sérgio Moraes. Alex Garcia has a really, really good takedown as well, but since the Homasi fight, I think Tim's takedown defense looked really, really solid. The first fight of Alex Oliveira, he stuffed him and ultimately physicaled him in the clinch and dumped him down with a body lock takedown. Did struggle in the rematch. He kind of blamed it on the foot injury, but he did actually get on top of Oliveira for the last couple of minutes of the first round. I think that was more Alex tried to pull him down with a muscle takedown, and it didn't work, and Tim ended up on top. Alex Garcia, I remember he stuffed Alex. Alex didn't try to take him down too much, but I remember in particular one excellent sprawl from Tim Means. He stuffed Belal Muhammad as well. Belal got him down once, but Tim got straight back up. And Sérgio, I think, only attempted one takedown that he fouled on. So I think Tim's definitely improved his takedown defense. I think Niko's going to struggle to get this to the floor, so I think this is going to be a stand-up fight. And Niko has a puncher's chance. He has got power, but Tim Means has never been KO'd in his career, so he's obviously got a stellar chin. And Tim has got a real dangerous repertoire standing. He's got elbows, punches, knees, and I'm not sold on Niko Price's chin here. So Tim's sitting at -200. I can see why people don't want to bet Tim as a decent sized favourite, because he has built a little bit of a aura of flakiness in recent memory, but he should get the job done here. And Niko Price's chin might be absolute dust after that last fight. It was already in question, and he might have been finished off against Razak. And Tim hits hard, and he's got a high repertoire, and I think Tim might even try and mix in takedowns here like he did against Rainey, and try and ground and pound Niko. But I think he's got the advantage standing as well, so I'm going to go with Tim to get another solid KO here, much like the Rainey fight. And at this kind of level, Tim excels. I think when he steps up, I'd say Sérgio Moraes, Belal Muhammad, Brazilian Cowboy, they're a level above Niko Price. But when Tim is at this kind of level, now I think Niko is probably a bit better than Homasi and Howard and Diego Lima, but I also think he's a level below the guys I mentioned before that, and I think that kind of level Tim excels at. He's never going to be a champion, he's never going to be in the top 10, but at this kind of level he's a dangerous guy for opponents, and I think his repertoire on the feet is going to be too much for Niko, so I'm definitely going Tim here. So staying in the men's welterweight division, co-main event, we've got Zaleski de Santos taking on Curtis Millender. Millender about 3 inches taller, 3-inch reach advantage as well. Stats very similar for both. Both land over 4 significant strikes per minute. Both absorb nearly 3. Neither really go for takedowns. They're both well under 1 takedown attempted per 15 minutes. Both their takedown defense is in question. They're both at about 50%, but Zaleski's takedown defense isn't good, and neither's Millender's. So I think Zaleski's probably the better grappler. Is he going to try and take Curtis down? It's probably be the smart thing to do, but the UFC have booked this fight for a reason. both guys savages on the feet. They want a stand-up fight. So is Zaleski going to give that to us? He probably is. I didn't go back and watch the Dober fight, but I'm sure he used takedowns on Dober in that fight. But since then they've been pretty much non-existent. His takedowns definitely aren't the best, but Curtis Millender, the weakness for Curtis is his takedown defense, and when he faces someone who's a decent wrestler, he's definitely going to be in trouble because his takedown defense is not good and he's not good off his back. But can Zaleski get him down, and will he fight smart on the feet? I think Millender has the advantages. I think he's the longer fighter. He's more technical. I think he does edge this fight on the feet. So I'm going to pick Millender to win a decision here. Zaleski's got an iron chin. I don't think he's going to get rid of him. Curtis has never been KO'd either. So we've got two tough guys here. But if Zaleski's smart, he will try and take Curtis down. But whether he has any joy, I don't know, because his takedowns aren't great. But Millender, I mean, he is a bit of a turtle off of his back, so if he does end up getting taken down, he could be in trouble in this fight. But I just can't see Zaleski being able to do that successfully for 2 rounds to win, and enough to win a decision. And will he even want to do it is the question. It'd be the smart thing to do, but I think on the feet Millender does edge this with his length. But it's not to say you can't get inside Millender. Thiago Alves was doing okay in round 2 against Millender until he got ultimately knocked out, and like I said, he does absorb around 3 significant strikes. So his defense, you know, it's not impenetrable. You know, absorbing 3 significant strikes per minute, that's fairly high, and Zaleski can hit hard, so it's a hard fight to call. I think it's about a pick'em line at the bookies. Oh, it's exactly a pick'em now. So pick'em fight feels about right to me, but I'm going to go with Millender to win a decision here. I think with his length, I think that's going to be the difference, but it's a hard fight to be confident in, especially if Zaleski does try and mix in the takedowns, but I just don't know if Zaleski's takedowns are good enough. But yeah, I'm going to go with a decision win here for Millender in a very competitive fight. Right, main event, another heavyweight fight. Don't know what the UFC are doing to me this week. We've got the Black Beast, Derrick Lewis, taking on Junior dos Santos. Quick look over the stats, both a similar height. Derrick has a 2-inch reach advantage. Junior dos Santos, significant strikes landed per minute, way higher than Derrick. He's kind of doubles up on Derrick. He's up at 5 almost. Derrick just over 2.5. Derrick does absorb less though, just over 2. Dos Santos is over 3, but I think the Cain Velasquez fights probably make that figure worse than it would be. If you take away the Cain fights, you probably see that he doesn't actually absorb that many strikes. Dos Santos, very good footwork for a heavyweight, pretty light on his feet. Did get to the point where we was questioning how shot is he, because the Cain Velasquez fights were brutal beatdowns for almost 50 minutes. I think they both go, and they got stopped in one of them in the 5th round, but yeah, you're talking almost 50 minutes of just pure punishment. Got knocked out by Stipe Miocic as well. He has a bad habit of backing into the fence, Junior dos Santos, and I don't think it's something he's going to correct now. He's pretty far into his career. He's 35. You know, 35 isn't that old for a heavyweight, but for someone who's had the fights Junior dos Santos has, you've got to think that he is getting on for a heavyweight. Brutal fights with Cain. He got stopped by Alistair Overeem, stopped by Stipe Miocic. He's had, I mean, the Ivanov and Tuivasa fights fairly good fights for him stylistically. Ivanov is someone that he could just use his footwork on, move around, much like Harry beat Ben Rothwell. You know, he's, as I said earlier, he's got really good footwork for a heavyweight. He moves well. If you're someone that's kind of stuck in the mud, you're going to struggle against him. Tai Tuivasa, it kind of hard to say how good he is at the moment. He was having some problems in that fight against the younger, fresher fighter, but ultimately he caught him in the second round and managed to put him away. So it's easy to say he is going to kind of do what he done to Ivanov and Rothwell here, because Derrick Lewis doesn't have great footwork. JDS should be able to use that footwork, move around, hit in and out, but the danger is he's probably going to have to do it for 5 rounds. Not sure if he's going to get Derrick Lewis out of there. I mean, Mark Hunt got a KO in the 4th round, Sean Jordan, but it was like a hook kick, and Mitrione caught him really early. And Junior Dos Santos probably, I don't know if he's really going to step in and try and commit with his punches. I think he's just going to try and skirt around the outside and just outbox Lewis from the outside, basically. He's definitely got the footwork to do it. You look at it on paper, stylistically, it's a real tough fight for Derrick Lewis, but you do have the worry with Dos Santos where he does back into the fence. But Derrick Lewis, I mean, he just pulls wins out of nowhere. He was losing to Volkov, was going to lose a clear decision. Caught him in the 3rd round, beat Ngannou in a, God knows what Ngannou was doing in that fight, staring match. Tybura, he was going to lose that fight, caught Tybura on the fence and KO'd him. He was losing to Travis Brown. He just loses fights up until the moment he wins them, so it's really hard to bet against him. But Junior Dos Santos has definitely got the best footwork and best volume of anyone he's ever faced. So, I mean, he's got that puncher's chance, Derrick Lewis, because he's got ridiculous power. Dos Santos has been put away a few times now, and he does back into the fence, but Derrick Lewis has got bad cardio as well. I just think Dos Santos can style on him for 5 rounds here. There's no way I'm betting Junior Dos Santos. He's minus 235 favourite. I just wouldn't be able to relax. I think it probably goes 5 rounds with Dos Santos outboxing him, and it would just be an awful sweat, because Derrick Lewis is the king of insane comeback wins from the brink of defeat. I mean, he even done it. I bet Derrick Lewis against Shamil, and it was a 5-round fight. He was 3 rounds down, and then Shamil kind of gassed, and he ended up getting him down and grounding and pounding him. But Junior Dos Santos is a very good heavyweight, in, as I keep saying, in the sense that he's got really good cardio, really good footwork, he's fast, and he can do it for 5 rounds. He doesn't gas. But he's got to be careful when Lewis does come forward and get aggressive, which he will in spurts. He's got to be very careful he doesn't get trapped on that fence. So I'm going to go with Dos Santos to win a decision here. Fight goes to decision, it's plus 250. I think that's interesting. It'd be interesting to see what the Junior Dos Santos decision line is. I remember I bet Junior Dos Santos to win a decision over Ben Rothwell. It wasn't a massive bet, but I can't remember what odds I got on that now. But was it plus 400? Plus 350? But I would definitely be looking at Junior Dos Santos decision line there. If it pays kind of plus 350 or so, then I'll definitely put something on that, because I can definitely see this being similar to the Rothwell fight. But he's got to be on his guard for the whole 25 minutes. He's got to be careful. He's got to make sure he's not backing into that fence. I mean, he's at ATT now. I'm sure it's something they must be working on. But it's hard to teach an old lion new tricks. So I'm going to go with Dos Santos via decision. But I can't bet his money line at that price. So that's a wrap for this week, guys. As I said at the start of the podcast, check out the website for the subscription betting packages. We're 6-0 on the UFC this year, both in terms of pre-bets and live bets. If you bet £100 or $100 per unit, you'd be up about 4,600 with us so far, and we're only just scratching the surface of the amount of events we've got coming up. So hopefully this is going to be a highly profitable year for me and for you guys. Check us out on Twitter at Pro MMA Betting. Give us a follow, and please hit the subscribe button on here, and I'll be back next week for breakdown of the UFC London fights. Good luck, everyone.